Hi, Carlos.
Hello, Paul. Good to
So-
see you.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Carlos, you are the Assistant Director in Policy and Practice at the Laudato Si Research Institute based at the University of Oxford. Do you want to tell us a bit more about what that job involves?
Yeah, so this institute tries to include the voices of marginalized voices of faith communities and indigenous communities in a specific niche of knowledge, which is the knowledge of wisdom that stems out of the faith, the values, the ethics, the moral understandings, their indigenous cosmologies, how they see Mother Earth, the connections, and what does that imply in terms of policies and practices. And yeah, we're based at the University of Oxford, but we try to connect with the interfaith communities, the indigenous communities across the world. Hence, COP28 is ideal because
Yeah.
you connect with all the different grassroots that we normally do just on two dimensions. So I know the CO2 tons involved to get here, but you can imagine that we've already connected for years with lots of these people, and we normally just have a one dimension or two dimensions kinds of connections. And here we have them in flesh, and we can connect with all of them in one
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. So you've been in Dubai now for how many days?
Yeah, for 4 days now. Yeah.
And what's it been like? What does it feel like being there?
Well, to be honest, it's crazy. I mean, it's one of those spaces. They've been playing with some of the statistics. I think 70,000, and you know very well we live in Petersfield, which is 15,000, I think, just the town. So many times where we live, and also it's just a melange of different cultures, spaces. There's no way any individual can grasp everything that's going on. You can see here, there's a community just of indigenous communities just um, going across and singing. But of course, they are those are fraction of all the things that are going on at the same time. So it's a little bit like that film that says everything, everywhere, all at the same time. So that's exactly what's going on here. And so good, it's a good thing, but also a bad thing because you cannot grasp what's going on in so many ways. It's just unfathomable the amount of humanity that's just here.
So you in particular, then, what have you been doing whilst you've been there?
So I tried to focus on a methodology. I was doing a workshop. I was on integral ecology, and the word integral is on purpose. Is about including the communities that are normally excluded in knowledge frameworks. So, for instance, you can think about the IPCC report where the policy science nexus, there's only four communities that normally are invited into the knowledge table and decision-making table, which is the scientists, the policymakers, the business leaders, and the economists. And that's pretty much everything that you need to for climate governance or the environmental governance in the world. Now, the challenge is how to include all these communities that are so diverse, faith communities and indigenous communities into the mix. And so I came to do a workshop with other faith communities in the Faith Pavilion, which is just around the corner over here. And and the idea was to take take stock of what's out there. How can all those values that communities have, faith communities, how can they be transformative? Imagine if all the different religions, all the different faiths, all the different indigenous spiritualities were actually listened by the policymakers, and the communities themselves would be able to also collaborate in terms of climate change, governance, and environmental transformations. Um, then another world would be, just think of two religions, the Christianity and the Muslim community. That is already half of the world, just half of the world. And if they have this aim of an ecological conversion or transformation systemically within, inside the souls and also in the actions, to change the system, then I think another world is possible. So yeah, I was doing that, and also visiting as a methodology, visiting the excluded communities that normally I could not reach just through Zoom. So, for instance, the indigenous communities, so there's the indigenous peoples pavilion, and also the women and youth pavilions. So I'm basically focused, and the developing world countries, that may be the African and Latin American and Asian countries that I could reach, and that's it. And there's not much more time to do that.
Mm. Well, that sounds incredible. I mean, you've been engaging with COP for quite a few years now and sort of thinking about it more broadly. What do you think about COP as a process?
Well, you know, to be frankly honest about this, it's the ultimate paradox to be here in COP28, where you see the United Arab Emirates, the lead of the country. You just need to Google the news. It's basically, I there's no other way to put it. It's a science denier of climate change, and also there is this thing about how many CO2 tons are we creating with 70,000 people coming here. What I think it's important to have global governance spaces to discuss global issues, but it's also more important that all this, there's amazing venues and amazing things, all this material wealth that it's all around. In it's such an amount of investment could be, from my perspective, could be better invested locally, doing local versions of participatory processes, which would be more ecologically friendly, more intimate, more frank, in which you could have transdisciplinary, communities, everyone invited, and then and only then, once you've done a really thorough process in each country, and facilitate the funding to do that as well, and the installations for that country to do that, then you can think about the global, so that you can have representatives of those that have already discussed these things in a very participatory way, going to this thing and not have this enormous amount. This elephant is not sustainable, I don't think. Imagine, so for instance, in COP, in 2 years' time, we'll have the next COP will be the COP for in Belém, in Brazil, and that's a tiny city in a developing country where surrounded by the Amazon. Are you going to invite these 70,000 people to that little place? What is the ecological impact that that's going to have? Of course not. What you need to have is local territorial alternatives in which you can listen to the voices of the excluded, voices of those who know best how to care the forest and the sacred rivers and so forth, and to be able to enforce that in a more genuine way. I think there's a lot of here of, I don't know, it's like a fair. It's like a Disney World of the ecological, environmental, and at the same time, I'm saying that, and at the same time, and there's a lot of genuine, authentic, um, people that are eco-anxious, that are fighting for a change, that believe thoroughly in this, but at the same time, we're just going it's a little bit like this, isn't it? Like it's a herd behavior. Is a lot of, we're doing this because it's the only thing that we know, but actually there ought to be, is this the best thing that humanity has to face the greatest challenge that has been not just for humanity, but for every living being in the planet? That's the question. And I think there are other ways, and there should be other ways, because this is not sustainable.
Yeah, I think there's some really interesting things then for educators in the UK to be thinking, about in terms of what you've said there about the role that they can play in kind of casting a critical eye, kind of exploring these things critically,
Mm,
like you say, kind of the carbon footprint of this, as well as understanding the positive impacts of the communities that come together in these spaces, but also the idea that educators play a role within a community and that
mm,
by focusing on that and bringing together a local community, that's a way that
mm.
educators can kind of play a role in this bigger jigsaw. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think educators can be transformative when they tap into the values and systems that the grassroots believe in. So, for instance, if you think about how in this case the Ministry of Education taps into the power of the beliefs and hope, you know, how can you transform that so to beat eco anxiety? Eco anxiety is like an infection that is is going through the UK, but it's going globally. Everyone is worried, but it can also be paralyzing and be paralyzing of youth. And I think it is precisely the values of hope and solidarity and that need to be translated into action with methodologies. And I think this is what I appreciate a lot from the Ministry of Education, which is that you're doing easily graspable methodologies to actually apply them in the local spaces, which is exactly what we're trying to, I'm trying to convey. We should be focusing on what we can do and starting with the younger generations, include youth, because they will be the ones that will need these tools, will need this education, but also they need to overcome eco anxiety.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Carlos. Thank you for sharing your insights and your experience. And I hope you have a really good. When are you coming back?
Just 2 days more in the sixth. Quite frankly, it's fortunately hot to go from one pavilion to another. I run out of clothes just of how much sweat, and they tell me that this is the actual. We've come in the good times. So in terms of the temperatures, it comes to 35 to 40. There's these things up there that provide us a little bit of shade. There's some ice cream or pops, they call it, and then you have a lolly, and then you feel a little bit better. But of course, this is just incredible. The latest thing that was mind blowing for me. A friend invited me for a dinner last night, and I went to this mall, and there's a cathedral consumption in here. It's just incredible. But what was incredible for me was the amount of energy that they were using inside, because it's not just that everything has AC, the aircon full on, but inside, and I can send you some pictures that I took of that. Inside, they have so
I think you've just dropped off, Carlos.
enjoy the no, sorry.
Do you want to?
Oh,
You've
we
just,
we
yeah, you've
disconnected a
come
little
back
bit.
now. Do you want to repeat that? What did you see inside in this
Okay.
place? Yeah.
Well, okay. I was going to say. So once you see inside, it is a lot of people um, playing with snow, with
Wow.
sledges, going through sledges, and then in and playing with snow. And all it's a winter wonderland, a space as big as the Taro Leisure Center. Okay, um, and it's just mind-boggling. I was thinking, oh, this is terrible. This mall is how much electricity and the aircon full on, and I was cold inside. But then I saw within the mall this complex of snow inside, and people just having a winter wonderland with coats and sledges, and where Santa would be happy to be, that kind of setting. And I was like mind blown. This is just another level. Yeah. Anyway,
Wow.
so
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
all right. Okay. Thank
Hey,
you, Paul. Take
bye.
care. All right. Bye.